Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my Game Week 15 deadline decisions where I'll be rounding up the latest injury news and discussing your final questions and dilemmas before the deadline. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, let's start with the press conference and injury updates as of Friday afternoon at 3 PM. And let's start with Manchester City. So, in terms of the actual City squad, they have no fresh injury concerns. The only two players that remain out are Kovacic and Rodri. So according to Pep, you're absolutely fine in terms of injury and fitness if you want to go out and buy the likes of O'Reilly and Foden. And I do think with the fixtures coming up and the way that they're playing right now, these are two players that we should look to invest in. Of course, the big discussion point, considering we've just had a midweek deadline, and this will now be 3 games in a row in 7 days that the likes of O'Reilly and Foden would be starting, are they going to start? I will just say, and this is definitely famous last words, Pep Roulette hasn't been as unpredictable and as bad as it was a few years ago. When players are playing well, when they're fit and available, they largely are starting quite consistently, and we've seen that with the minutes for O'Reilly and Foden recently. What I would say is if you're buying someone like O'Reilly or buying Phil Foden, you should be buying these assets thinking you want to hold them for the foreseeable future, or at least the near future. So yes, you really do want them for Sunderland at home. You want them for the week you buy them. But if they are to miss this game, I think they are two players that are very clearly in Pep's starting 11 as of right now, and that could of course change. So you would expect them to start the games following that. So I would still be happy to buy both of them, but it would not surprise me if one of the two of them or both were benched. If you were to push me right now, I think both start. Pep was actually asked about O'Reilly, the amount of minutes he's had, and also potentially benching him as well. So he said, maybe it's going to happen in terms of resting O'Reilly soon, because they asked, are you going to rest him at any point? So maybe it will. I don't know when. But at the same time, he's young. He's not Bernardo, maybe, or other players who are already grandfathers. He's so young. He's a teenager. He recovers well. We'll see day by day. Obviously, Pep's not going to come out and go, yeah, I'm going to rest him in Game Week 15. Haha, FPL managers. He's not going to come out and tell us what he's going to do. But this does sound largely quite promising. So all of that to say, no one can truly predict Pep, but I think his lineups have been a little bit more consistent. And I think when he trusts a player, when they're fit and available, and especially when they are younger players like Foden and O'Reilly, I think he's comfortable playing them quite a lot. So I would expect both to start more than they don't. If they don't start this weekend, I still think they are good long-term holds, and I would be happy to buy either of them. Moving on to Arsenal, I'm almost sometimes thinking, is it worth even including anything from Arteta in the press conferences? He withholds information, he lies. But what I do respect recently is he's basically just said, I'm not going to tell you. He's not even lying anymore. He's just like, I'm not telling you. Why would I tell you? So in this, they asked him about Declan Rice, who, by the way, when he came off himself, because he came off due to a small knock, he said, I'll be absolutely fine. I'll be ready for the weekend. Declan Rice is a bit of a warrior in that sense. But Arteta said, well, let's see. I think with all of the questions I'm going to get, the answer, unfortunately, is going to be the same. We have another training session in the afternoon, and every hour is going to be very important to see the availability of the players. So he's basically saying, I'm not going to tell you. So we don't know on Declan Rice. I wouldn't be surprised if he does get a rest, given Arteta showed, benching Timber and Saka, that he is happy to not put out his strongest starting 11 every week in the Premier League. He's happy to rotate his players. I think he's learnt from previous seasons that you don't want to run the same players into the ground. That being said, this is a big game. Villa away at Villa Park. So I think if Rice is at all fit and available, I think he starts this. But I can't tell you right now because we don't have enough information. So not a great answer, but that's all we had. In terms of Mosquera's injury, he said that one is a little bit more complicated. So it does sound like Mosquera, if you trust Arteta, maybe looks more likely to be out for Game Week 15. Speaking of sort of players being rested, rotated, Arne Slot was actually asked about Mohamed Salah, as you would have expected in the press conference, and he gave a very politically correct answer and just said, Mo has been an exceptional player for us. He's always in my mind to start or to come in. I really think if you've got free transfers and nowhere else to use it, it probably is a good idea to just sell Salah for someone like Saka, or if you want to, Bruno Fernandes or Phil Foden. All of these players I prefer, and they are significantly cheaper and free up funds to use with the additional 5 free transfers we get next week. So you could try and keep Salah one more week. You could hope that he plays in this game because it's a game that you could expect him to do well in. But Liverpool aren't performing at the highest level right now, and Salah isn't starting, and you'd argue they look better when he's not on the pitch. So Salah is just a sell. And it might be that we potentially never own Mohamed Salah again in FPL unless he has a massive step up in the second half of the season. On Chelsea and Maresca, he said, and these are only small things, he regrets not starting a Chempong against Leeds, and he also mentioned that Esteval's minutes do need to be managed, and he's not going to play every game. So based on that, wouldn't be surprised if a Chempong starts in Gameweek 15 and Esteval is very rotated, but most people don't own those two. On Newcastle, Wissa apparently played 30 minutes on Wednesday in an 11 versus 11 game. Apparently, he dealt with it quite well. His body feels good. He's kind of almost ready to go. It sounds like in one of the upcoming games, we will start to see Wissa integrated back into the squad, but I'm not expecting it to come too quickly. I'm not expecting him to start anytime soon. And I do think with Walter you are probably going to get some good starts and good minutes over the coming games. I can't even promise you that he starts, though. You could see something like Anthony Gordon as the 9, but I don't think Wissa is a direct threat right now, but definitely in 4 or 5 Premier League games, we could start to see him in the squad. And once that happens, who knows who might be preferred as the 9. Moyes said that he's unfortunately not sure if Keane will return to the squad in Game Week 15. Lots of managers have just decided to go for the Arteta and Eddie Howe route of the past, which is just, I'm not going to tell you. They just say, oh, I'm not sure. We'll see. We've got training later, so we're not getting tons in these pressers. And then Sean Dyche confirmed that Gibbs White only has a few knocks. He basically said, like, Gibbs White's all right. He's getting kicked around a bit. He's played a lot of minutes, but he's fine. It's just a few knocks. So by all accounts, Dyche is pretty honest and upfront with this stuff. Sounds like Gibbs White should be okay if you've got him. So that was the presser updates. Again, sorry that I don't have more concrete info on a lot of these players, but still worth giving you the information. Let's now move on to some of the key transfers that you're looking at making and whether I would make them. So guys, let's discuss some of those key transfers that you're looking at making and my opinion on whether you should make them or not. Of course, this is a very unique week, and apologies for those of you that have heard this 100 times this week from different content creators, but just one final recap. Between Game Week 15 and 16, we get topped up to 5 additional free transfers to prepare for AFCON. Most of us don't really have more than 1 or 2 players. Some have 0 that are actually going to AFCON, but we do all get topped up. And the reason I say topped up is you're not given 5 additional free transfers. It just means that every single person going into Game Week 16 will see 5 free transfers on their page, which means you need to use all of your available free transfers before the Game Week 15 deadline. Otherwise, you're essentially burning them. Because if you've got 4 free transfers now and you don't use one, you're essentially gaining nothing when we go into Game Week 16. So everyone this week should be using at least 1 transfer and using all of their remaining free transfers. For me, that is just the 1. For some of you, you might be having an absolute field day and just using them on luxury things, like maybe changing around your 4 million defender or something as simple as that. That does not mean that I think you should take a hit. And arguably, given we're about to get 5 free transfers now, I probably think it means even less so that you should be tempted to take a hit. So here are the key transfers that people are considering. The first of which is to sell Virgil van Dijk for someone like Nico O'Reilly, Chow. I've seen a few people looking at downgrades to Joachim Andersen. This is actually one of the few that I don't love this week. I actually think Virgil van Dijk's a perfectly fine asset. I've even looked at buying him. Now, it's very easy for me to sit here and say that, because I don't own Virgil van Dijk. Sometimes the grass is greener on the other side. Sometimes you know yourself, you've owned an asset that has been so frustrating and you feel like they could have done more. And players looking in will be like, no, I actually think that's quite a good asset. Like, I think I would hold them. But you know yourself, you've been very frustrated. So I know Van Dijk owners wanted more from him. And watching Liverpool, they still look super susceptible to conceding chances. But defensively, if you look at the data, and data doesn't lie, like some people say, this is why XG is nonsense. They don't actually concede as many chances as the narrative suggests. He is brilliant for DEFCON. For a premium defender, he's one of the few that consistently hits it. And the fixtures coming up are brilliant for Liverpool. I'm not necessarily saying that Van Dijk is like top 2 or 3 defenders to own right now. And someone like an O'Reilly or a Chow, I think they're brilliant to bring in for this week. I'm just thinking, if I own Van Dijk right now, would I make this transfer? I probably wouldn't. But again, if you're looking at defenders to bring in, I do think O'Reilly and Chow should be at the top. Sunderland at home, Burnley at home. And they are quite a bit cheaper as well. So, let me say this. I probably wouldn't do it, but if you need to free up funds, or you're just desperate to bring in a City defender or a Newcastle defender for, again, a good run of fixtures for each of those teams, then feel free to do it. I'm never going to try and tell you not to do something. That's why I say I probably wouldn't, because it's all personal preference. In terms of would I sell Senesi, this is a player that I would be a lot happier selling, because whilst he is the best defender in FPL for defensive contribution points, Bournemouth concede too many goals. He concedes 2+ goals most games, which means he's not really gaining through the DEFCON. Like, I feel much more confident, believe it or not, that Liverpool keep clean sheets than I do someone like a Bournemouth. It just feels like it's never going to happen. Now, of course it will, and they've got the likes of Manchester United and Bournemouth coming up, 2 fixtures where you think there's a chance, and he will get you those defensive contribution points more often than not. So I don't think Senesi's a bad hold. I've got Senesi in my team. I'm probably just going to keep him for a few weeks. He's got Man United, like I say, next week. Then he's got Burnley. He's absolutely fine to keep if you have other issues to sort. But if I had the free transfers, again, you've got to use him this week. Selling to someone like O'Reilly, Joachim Anderson, who I think for me is probably the best cheap defender to own for the upcoming game weeks, or Chow, that all looks really good. By the way, I'm getting a lot of questions about will Chow start. I do think Fabian Schär steps in for this game. It feels like the sort of game where they can rotate a little bit. I think Fabian Schär comes in, which means probably one of Hall, Burn, or Chow miss out. Now, I think probably the most likely is one of Hall or Burn miss out. If Hall misses out, Burn's pushed out to left back. It's Chow, Schär, and Livramento as the rest of the back four. Obviously, if Dan Burn misses out, it's nice and simple. It's Chow and Schär as the centre-backs, Livramento and Hall as the full-backs. So I don't think Chow's very likely to be rotated. But there is always a chance they look at this and say, he's probably been their best defender recently. Burnley at home, maybe this is a chance to give him a rest. So I can't promise you he'll start, but I think he's a great asset. Regardless, long-term, I really like him. So if you've got nothing else to do on your team, selling the likes of Van Dijk and Senesi, I can get it. I'd lean more towards selling someone like a Senesi. Moving on to then some midfield transfers. Selling Iliman Ndiaye, I would just get this done. Nottingham Forest at home isn't the easiest game, and the output from him has been really poor. The underlying data has been pretty poor. I think he is a brilliant footballer. He's on penalties, and he's playing at home. So again, like me, if you have other issues this week, and you can't sell him, it's fine keeping him. But Yankuba Minta or Bruno G, these are players that I would much rather have for this week, but also moving forward as well. So this is a very easy green. Yes, I would make these transfers. In terms of selling Semenyo, I probably would. The only reason I've not said I definitely would, or I'd be very happy doing it, because I obviously sold Semenyo for Foden myself this week, is I actually think Semenyo is still a fine asset to hold. Semenyo's not going to AFCON. He plays against the Chelsea team that just conceded 3 goals to Leeds. He's playing at home. And after that, he plays Manchester United, who concede chances for fun, and then Burnley. The next 3 fixtures I really like for him. And he's not all of a sudden become a bad footballer. And the thing that I love about Semenyo, again, having sold him myself, is that his minutes are very good. Like, over this period, there are so many rotation doubts going into this weekend. Semenyo, you don't feel, is going to be one of them. He's always on the pitch. So, again, would I rather Yankuba Minte or Foden than Semenyo? Yes, I would, which is why I'd probably make the transfer. But if you told me that you have other issues to sort, I really don't mind keeping Semenyo a little bit longer. The one move that I probably like the least on this list is selling Brian Mbeumo. Now, I'm a Man United fan. I've watched us across the last 3 games, and I do think Mbeumo's output and general performances have dropped off slightly. That being said, I still think he's been quite unfortunate not to return in the last 3 games. I think he's been very close, even on Thursday evening. I thought he was very unfortunate not to score. He was very close to scoring. And I think if you add 1 goal across that period and maybe a couple of bonus, I think less people are looking at it. It's very fine margins in FPL. But all of that to say, I don't necessarily think Fernandes or Foden are massive upgrades on Brian Mbeumo for the next 2 weeks. I think especially Bruno Fernandes, it's very, very close. And we don't expect, although we haven't had confirmed, Mbeumo to leave until after the Game Week 16 fixture. So you are going to get another 2 weeks with him. And I still think he's a great asset. So again, if you've got nothing else to do, like your team is perfect, then selling Mbeumo to Fernandes or Foden, it's a move you're probably going to have to make anyway. But if you have any other issues in your team, I would probably sort them first and just be a little bit more patient with Manchester United's new signing. And then moving on to the forwards, this one's nice and simple. I'd be happy to sell Mateta now. Like the output, the minutes, the data, like everything has dropped off with Mateta. He just looks absolutely knackered, and I don't blame him. He's played so many minutes. There were so many times actually against Burnley when you're watching the highlights where you're like, running behind, like Chase, he just didn't seem to have it in him. And I'm no surprise at all that he came off early in that game. So I think his minutes could be reduced again. As much as Fulham just conceded 5 goals to City at Craven Cottage, this is usually quite a hard place to go to. And actually in his press conference, Glasner said that Crystal Palace are struggling to score goals right now, so they are focusing on clean sheets. Like even he himself has acknowledged that. So could Mateta score in a 1-0 win and get a 9-pointer? Yes. But I would back Walter and Thiago both more, not only this week, but in future weeks as well. So these are both moves I'd make, especially Thiago frees up money as well. In terms of who would I rather buy, Obviously, this week, I'd rather Walter, but moving forward, Thiago's a really nice asset to have from Game Week 16, so I don't think you can go wrong with either. I would maybe go for a slightly more long-term play, though, and just about lean towards buying Thiago. So there we go. I hope that's been helpful for you. But basically, most of these transfers you can make because you need to make them anyway. Try and improve your team. Do not burn and waste your transfers. Now let's move on to some other questions. So guys, it's been a little while since I've updated you on my club. And if you're wondering what club is, you've not seen my content before, you've not seen me mention it, it's a free-to-play fantasy football mobile game, which I've been playing now for probably almost 2 years. I actually was playing it for like 7 or 8 months before club contacted me. And I'm not only playing the game, but I'm also in the game as the director of football. And on top of that, I'm a shareholder within Formation Games, the company that created Club. So it's a project that I believe in a lot, I'm very heavily involved in, and a game which I play on a daily basis. Is basically, so fantasy football, so I can show you my team. So week to week, you go against an opponent, and you're in leagues, and you try and win your head-to-heads. And the reason I like it is it's week by week. So if you have a bit of a stinking week, you just bounce back the next week. And if you do get relegated from one of your leagues, like right now I think I'm in Gold 5, then I'll just go down and then I'll come back up again. So it's not a huge issue. I can get promoted slowly. So it feels a little bit more forgiving and also a little bit more casual than that. And on top of that, like the way that you get players is basically by meeting your agent or by getting loans. And you can also upgrade your facility. So there are multiple things that you can do within Club, but it also doesn't feel like it's got that same commitment and attachment as FPL. And on top of that, because it is weekly, you will match up against people of the same level as you. So if you start Club now, you're not missing out. Like normally I wouldn't recommend you start a fantasy game halfway through a season, but with Club, it's perfectly fine to do so. In fact, it's probably a good time to start right now. I'll just check the loan market. Salah. See, if I thought Salah might start, I'd be tempted. But what we're going to do now, I'll collect my cash. We're going to meet with Manny, and this is the way that you get players in Club. So all I want you to do, you can either write a comment or do it in your head. Try and think of what player Manny is going to get us. So he can bring me any player in the Premier League, and I can decide to sign them or not. So I'll tap to reveal. I'm going to see, it's raining very heavy outside, core, man. Every time I do a video or an integration, there is a Leeds 78, Strauch. He does start. Don't want him. Reject. Stink him. I actually really need a goalkeeper. Was there a goalkeeper in there? There wasn't. Okay. Because I have Nick Pope as my only goalkeeper. So I'm goalkeeperless at the moment. But if you want to check out Club, there'll be a link down below to do so. I highly recommend it. Completely free. It helps me out as well if you give it a go. And I just recommend it. It's like a nice casual fantasy football game, which most people seem to enjoy when they download. Also, make sure to join my league, 3462SK7. That will be linked down below as well. Check it out. Thank you to Club for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to it. So I thought I'd put it slightly earlier in the video today, just because a lot of people have been asking about free hit and wildcard drafts. Obviously, if you've still got either of these chips to play, you are running out of time. Do remember that for every chip this season, we get 2 of them. Obviously, we've always had 2 wildcards, but we also have 2 free hits, 2 triple captains, and 2 bench boosts as well. So make sure you're using them before the cutoff point for the second half of the season. In terms of the free hit, I do think this is a really nice week to use it. I will just note, in case you haven't seen, the Game Week 15 fixtures are the exact same as the Game Week 19 fixtures, just obviously the home and away fixtures are switched, so they're an identical mirror set of fixtures. The reason I bring that up is, if you're free hitting a perfect team in for Game Week 15, you're likely to want exactly the same players for Game Week 19, so a lot of the players that you're bringing in now are pretty decent transfers, is all I would say, but still, it's a nice week to free hit. In terms of what I would go for in the free hit, triple Brighton against West Ham feels good. Triple Man City against Sunderland, considering it's at home and how they've been playing, looks good. And I think triple Newcastle looks good. Now, you don't have to go all in. I know a lot of people are like, I don't want to have all of my team only playing in 4 fixtures, but I will point to my free hit in Game Week 13 and a lot of other people. I only had players from 4 games in that free hit, and I got a 1.1 million place green arrow. You don't have to invest and spread across 8 different games and 8 different teams. You can literally just go all in on 3 or 4 teams, and that is absolutely fine. So I've gone for Ramsdale in goal, cheap asset, nice route into the defence, and then you don't have to worry about potential rotation to the likes of Burn or Hall, or try and predict that Fabian Schär might start. Ramsdale's nice and safe, doesn't look like Pope's going to be available. Then I've gone for Chow, because I think, again, he probably looks the most likely to start. His data's been really good. He's decent for bonus when they keep a clean sheet. He can get DEFCON as well. So I think Ramsdale and Chow double up on the Newcastle defence looks good. I've then gone for O'Reilly and Van Hecke to complete the defence. The midfield four, nice and simple. I've gone Foden, Fernandes, Mbeumo, and Yankuba Minte. You could look for a Bukayo Saka here. You could go for an Anthony Gordon or a Barnes if you think you can predict their minutes. You could go for a Bruno G, of course. You could change from a double up on the defence on Newcastle to a double up on the attack. But this midfield four looks great. And then I've got Dewsbury Hall on the bench as the fifth midfielder. And then my front three felt so easy. Walter Marder, Haaland, Welbeck. It's a lovely team. I'm very jealous of those that have free hit him. You could go a little bit bigger at the back. And I guess the bigger mission here is I've got no Arsenal. So you might want to change that. You might want to chuck Yuri and Timber in the 11. Because on this team, I've got Yuri and Timber on the bench. You could just switch Van Hecke and Timber if you want to cover that defence. You could also chuck in a Crystal Palace defender if you want to cover the ownership as well and play a bit safer. But again, as we saw on free hit 13, I think you go all in on the free hit. Like you pick the players with the best fixtures and you don't worry and be fearful of the ownership. You just go for it. In terms of a Gameweek 15 wildcard, this was a bit more difficult to build, but a lot of the same kind of core base. So I've gone Verbruggen in goal. You could go Kelleher. You could go Sells. I don't think I would go Raya, but I do have bad team value. So maybe if you've got the money to do it, maybe go for it. I've then got O'Reilly and Chow once again. I've got Timber, but this time in the 11. And I've got Anderson and Mukiele. I think Joachim Anderson is the best, again, 4.5 million-ish cheap defender, so he'd be in there. The midfield five still has Foden, Fernandes, and Yankuba Minte, but I've also chucked Saka and Elliot Anderson. I think right now, that probably is the best midfield five. Foden, Fernandes, Saka, Minte, Anderson. In terms of value, price points, fixtures, everything put together. And then the front two is Haaland and Thiago. The missing players in here, no Walter Marder, which you could put in instead of maybe a Bruno Fernandes and then spread the funds around a bit more. Outside of that, I don't think this is desperately missed. Maybe I don't have three Arsenal, so you could chuck Declan Rice even in there if you wanted to, or go for Raya in the goalkeeper spot. And if you need to free up money, maybe you'll have to make a downgrade elsewhere. But this team seems to cover most of the major bases. It kind of picked itself in a lot of places. And I think this leaves you pretty flexible moving forward in terms of price points. And the team looks very good for Game Week 15. So hopefully that helps you if you're playing the free hit or the wildcard. If you are, let me know how much this team differs from your own. So then, guys, moving on to the benching decisions for this week. It did feel like a lot of people basically have their benching decisions made for them with the likes of Mukiele, Rodon, etc. having tough fixtures. Lots of people not even having an eighth attacker with the likes of Krupi and Guiu sitting on most people's benches. So there didn't seem as many this week. But for those that did, you can obviously see on your screen the benching decisions graphic. Questions that I was getting from a lot of people, benching the likes of Enzo Fernandez, João Pedro, if you've got 8 good attackers, I don't mind it. Bournemouth aren't a great defence. I've said, even in the Senesi, when we talk about Senesi, they do seem to concede a couple of goals each game. But both of them I could see getting slightly reduced minutes, João Pedro in particular. The output hasn't been great, and Chelsea looked pretty poor against Leeds. Now, they might bounce back, but it is away. And I wouldn't mind benching them in favour of some of the other assets. So I don't think I'd feel terrible about that. Like I've got Elliot Anderson above João Pedro, above Enzo Fernandez. I think he's fantastic. In terms of defenders, I've got Yuri and Timber a little bit low down because I trust Villa at Villa Park to create chances. And obviously with the possible injury to Mosquera, Saliba, Gabriel, obviously playing a lot of minutes, I do wonder if this is a game where Arsenal could concede. But if you were like, Ross, how have you got Timber that low down? He's got to start. I get that. I'm starting Timber quite happily in my own team. Other questions that I was getting was the classic kind of Anderson versus Tarkowski versus a Crystal Palace defender. I've got Tarkowski ahead of all of them. Playing at home, great for DEFCON, we know that. Everton have been a little bit better defensive recently. And you just know that if he does get a clean sheet, as we saw last week, it can be a 10-pointer. I think Joachim Anderson versus a Richards or a Gay is so close. Like Fulham and Palace are both, they normally sit across the season about 8th for expected goals conceded. They are top half of the table defences, Fulham and Palace. And I think they both play for low-scoring games. We've heard that from Glasner recently. I think that's the sort of game usually, after a 5-4, I know that's funny, that Fulham play for as well. I could see this being 0-0, 1-0, 1-1 kind of game. I have just about gone for Joachim Anderson ahead of the likes of Gay and Richards, simply because his DEFCON is a little bit more consistent, even though he didn't hit it, obviously, in Game Week 14, and he's playing at home. So for that reason, if I had to start one of Richards or Anderson, for example, Joachim Anderson that is, I would start the Fulham defender. If you've got Munoz it's a different story. Munoz isn't in the same category, of course, as Richards or Gay. I've got Munoz up there ahead of Timber, ahead of Elliot Anderson, ahead of Dewsbury Hall, ahead of Iliman Njaya. I think Daniel Munoz is that good. I think he's a player that you have to be starting. Semenyo was another player that I saw people benching. I know I've just sold him. I wouldn't be benching him unless you've got 7 other brilliant attackers. I'm seeing people benching Semenyo ahead of players like Enzo Fernandez. I'd much rather start Semenyo at home than I would Enzo Fernandez away from home. I'm seeing people bench him for the likes of Joachim Anderson or Gay. So for me, as much as I just sold Semenyo, it's because I wanted Foden, not because I think he's a bad asset. So hopefully that's covered it. Again, you can always pause this, glance at it, look at the benching decisions graphic. This always comes down to your gut feeling more than anything. And let me know if you massively disagree with anything on this list. So guys, I thought I would chuck captaincy at the end of the video because I know after last week and given he has Sunderland at home this week, lots of people just default to Haaland. I get it. I've not really considered anyone else. And I actually think Haaland is a good triple captain shout this week. Even though Sunderland have been mightily impressive this season, I still think I would at least consider Haaland for triple captain. And if that's the case, he's got to be considered the best captain. So I've not looked elsewhere, but I do realise that not everyone plays this game the same way. So I'd like to at least quickly address captaincy. You will see on the table, if you didn't watch the last video, I've now changed it to say non-penalty expected goal involvement H/A per 90 and opponent XGC H/A per 90. All this means for this video and future videos is I am only showing the data for either home or away, respective of what the fixture is. So for Erling Haaland, it says Sunderland at home, of course, that's his fixture. That means I am only showing his home data, and I am only showing Sunderland's away data. For Fernandez, I'm only showing his away data and Wolves' home data because he's playing away and Wolves are playing at home. So I've not got their total data. It's relevant to whether it's home or away because I think that matters. Like some teams and some players are much better home and away. And actually, Haaland's away data is better than his home data this season, which is pretty crazy. But even his home data is unbelievable. Like almost 1 non-penalty expected goal involvement. He's projected to get 9.3 points by Hub, which is incredibly high. And actually, we know that Sunderland are much weaker away from home. 1.53 XGC puts them about 14th or 15th in terms of away data. So they are really, really strong at home. Away from home, less so. This is a game where you expect City to score a good few goals. I will say, I've got Foden in 4th on this list if you don't go for Haaland. If you promised me that Foden got 80 plus minutes, he'd be second. He'd be the second best captaincy option. But given I think there is a chance he doesn't start, and even if he does, there's a chance of an early sub, his expected minutes are lower than someone like Fernandez, Saka, and Mbeumo. And when you lower someone's expected minutes, you lower their projected returns too. So I've got Foden maybe a little bit lower than you'd expect. But if you, in your head, think, I know for a fact, like I really believe he's going to get 80 plus mins, I think he's the second best captaincy option this week after Haaland. You could argue that he's right up there alongside him, considering he's a midfielder and considering his form. I would always usually back, though, Erling Haaland. I do have Fernandez in second. I will say, though, I don't know that I'd be happy to like fully go through. He might be my vice captain just due to the minutes. Like the minutes and the penalties alone feel great. And Wolves away is a good fixture. But Wolves are actually okay away from home. 1.37 XGC, for example, is a better sort of defensive number than what we see from Sunderland away from home. So I don't think this is like the perfect fixture. And on top of that, Fernandez and Mbeumo and Manchester United all have weaker data away from home. Fernandez's non-pen expected goal involvement, and again, quite a small sample, is 0.24 away from home. It's 0.55 at home. Fernandez is much better at home. And that doesn't mean he can't score away from home. And it doesn't mean, as we saw on Thursday evening, that he can't blank at home. But you would rather, I think, ideally, as we've seen with Haaland in the past maybe, captain Fernandez, or at least consider him, along with Mbeumo when they're playing at home. So I'm less interested this week. Walter I've got in 3rd. Again, if you promised me he played 80 plus minutes, I might put him ahead of Fernandez. But once again, I do have some doubts. Now, I would be surprised if he's benched. But if Anthony Gordon starts this game, you could see a front 3 where it's Elanga or Murphy, Gordon as the 9, and Barnes off the left. You wouldn't be hugely surprised. You think that is a front 3 that could very easily dispatch of Burnley at home. If there is a fixture to rest him, this doesn't feel like an awful one to do so. And that's not me scaremongering or trying to make you not want to transfer him in. I still think he's a great transfer in and a great captaincy option. But that's the reason that he's a little bit lower. Because in games like this, after midweek fixtures, when they've played lots of games, I do worry a little bit, especially with some of the comments that we've seen from Eddie Howe. So again, it may be worrying over nothing. He's still a top 5 option for me, but that's why he's down in 3rd on this list, because I just know that Fernandez will probably get 90 mins unless there's an issue that we don't know about. Other options you could go for, Bukayo Saka always deserves consideration. Villa away isn't an awful fixture, but they themselves are better at home. You can see, in terms of the defensive data from all of the teams on this list, Villa at home themselves do have the best data. So this isn't really the fixture to target, but Bukayo Saka's got fantastic data himself, better than a lot of other players on this list, even away from home. The one player that probably deserves more of a shout, I've got in 8th, but you could argue should be higher, is Danny Welbeck. I think this week, given he got his rest midweek, I think his minutes will be pretty good. I'd expect 75 plus minutes in this game. And his data at home is brilliant. Now, it is a very limited sample size. I think he's only started 4 at home this season and been benched in 3 of them. So he's not got enough minutes to confidently say that this will continue. But he's got 0.69 non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90 at home. And also, we know that West Ham away from home, they do struggle defensively. That's why we've actually captained Bruno Fernandes going into Game Week 14. So, good fixture, good data. He's had his rest. I think Danny Welbeck could be a really nice shout. Even Yankuba Minte, by the way. So, listen, there are options to captain someone else if that's what you're into, if that's what brings you joy in FPL, or you're in a milli league where you have to do that, fine. If that isn't something that brings you joy, or you're not forced to do it, I would just captain Haaland this week. I think it's absolutely fine some weeks to just default to him. He's got the best fixture. He's playing at home. He's got good chance of scoring a goal. He's in form. I'm not going to overthink it this week. So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 15 deadline decisions video. Hopefully that has been helpful. And if it has, please do smash that like button and make sure to subscribe as well. Most important thing to take from this is to make sure that you use your transfers ahead of the Game Week 15 deadline. But I'll see you on the deadline stream tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. So until then, thank you very much. Bye-bye.